up my whole life thinking that there's something not quite right about the way my brain functions. And when I finally got that diagnosis as an adult, things started to make sense.
How did you reconcile the beauty queen part of you and the part of you that cares for your mental health, especially competing in the Olympics of pageantry?
I had people telling me, oh, you must be the happiest girl in the world. And I thought, no.
Tell me a juicy secret you've never told anybody else before.
One time I had a shoot for Miss Universe Australia and...
Oh my goodness. Daria Varlamova is a model, therapist, mental health advocate, and spokesperson for disability inclusion and neurodiversity. She is also an ambassador for Special Olympics Australia, and as if she wasn't awesome enough, she is also Miss Universe Australia 2021. Let's welcome to Burning Questions, Daria Varlamova.
Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thank you so much for being here. Daria, my first burning question is, what can't you do?
Everything.
What can't she do, MJ?
Everything.
The only correct answer. I'm so happy to be in conversation with you. You are such a beautiful person inside and out. And I would just love to kick things off with a rundown, just a quick rundown of your journey so far, personal, professional, and what led you to the woman you are today.
Okay, the woman I am today, I feel like there's just an amalgamation of different things that shaped me and molded me into who I am today. I feel like I always like to say I'm Russian born, Perth bred, and Melbourne based.
Oh.
So I was born in Russia, in Bryansk actually, and I moved with my mum when I was 8 years old to Western Australia, and I did my education there, and then close to a decade ago now, I moved to Melbourne to pursue the creative fields, and that's where I am today.
Wow. And something we have in common is, of course, being Universe alums.
Oh yeah.
What was that like for you, competing in COVID?
That was, oh my gosh, it was quite an experience. So it was my third time going for Miss Universe Australia, and 2 out of the 3 times we were in lockdown. So I feel like my experience was a little bit different. I remember it was one Tuesday night, and the final was held over Zoom, and all the girls had different hubs in their states, but Victoria was the one state that was still in lockdown. We're in complete isolation. And then my housemate was working remotely from home that night, and she was just doing her taxes in the next room.
Oh my goodness.
And then, they announced me as the winner, and I just remember being so shell-shocked. And the previous Miss Universe Australia was in the building next door. So they actually got her to bring over some flowers to the concierge, and concierge brought the flowers up. So I opened up my door, and at least there was a nice little bouquet. But yeah, it was quite an experience, and a few days later the lockdown was lifted, so that was great.
Right.
When I eventually made it overseas to compete at Miss Universe, I had actually never had any formal face-to-face walk training. So my first time setting foot on stage was at Miss Universe. So it was like a deer in headlights.
You are so brave.
But I was so lucky because I had my mentor, Jay, and he's a very dear friend of mine now. He's one of the first people to have believed in me. And he was my pageant coach essentially throughout the system. I honestly don't think I could have done it without him. And aside from his training, we did so much work and prep in terms of Q&As and things like that. But it was deeper than that because he was the first person to actually believe in me. I remember, with all the pageant pages, and they're very passionate, or they're very passionate.
They can be overzealous sometimes.
Yeah,
they're like Asian parents,
Yeah.
They always want us to overachieve, which is great. Keeps you in check.
Yeah, Asian parents are quite similar to Soviet parents in that way. But so he was the first person to believe in me, and all the rankings, when the girls, the favourites get ranked, and I was never on there. And he was the first one to do a post about me, and he was like, oh, I really see something in this girl. And it just goes to show you that sometimes it takes that one person
You
to
only need
believe
one.
in you.
Exactly.
Exactly. So he kind of sparked something inside of me, and yeah, I honestly couldn't have done it without his support. So thank you, Jay. Love you.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Jay. I heard that you were diagnosed at a very young age with generalized anxiety disorder. And at 7 years old, was it?
Yeah.
I watched your intro.
Oh my
I
gosh.
watched your Miss Universe intro.
Okay. I was like,
did
where
my
did you hear
homework.
this?
I did my
Okay,
homework.
cool.
I know, oddly specific.
So well researched.
That's rare, I would say, to be diagnosed so early. Definitely a blessing in terms of early diagnosis, but also I'm sure it was very confronting as a 7-year-old to label this thing that you thought maybe just all your friends had it. Something that just everybody struggled with. When in fact that wasn't the case. What was that like for you?
Yeah, in fact, it wasn't the case because actually I recently got diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. So I actually think I was misdiagnosed as a kid. And to go the majority of my life with the wrong diagnosis was really tough. But to receive any diagnosis as a child is quite jarring. But that's why I'm such an advocate for early intervention and screening for neurodiversity and ADHD, because I grew up my whole life thinking that there's something not quite right about the way my brain functions. It's like I need glasses, or I have glasses and they're foggy and I can't seem to clean them. That's what it felt like to be in my brain. And when I finally got that diagnosis as an adult, things started to make sense, and I would look back to my childhood and my life and I would reflect, and things really fell into place. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Absolutely. And being in that beauty pageant industry where you are so put under a microscope and you've got millions of eyes on you and you've got so many voices, and then having this invisible illness, how did you reconcile the beauty queen part of you and the part of you that cares for your mental health and strives to protect your peace, especially competing in the Olympics of pageantry?
Yeah, it certainly is the Olympics of pageantry. But when I went to Miss Universe, that was prior to my official ADHD diagnosis. But I was, in talks with a psychiatrist, and I was under the suspicion that I had it. And I remember before I went to Miss Universe, I was Googling ADHD Miss Universe, neurodiverse Miss Universe, and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find any articles or any other pageant title holders, coming out and talking about their experience. So I wish, I had that formal diagnosis sooner, and I wish I could step into it, because to my knowledge, I was the first contestant to openly speak about that, and I'm open to be corrected. But according to my research, I couldn't find any articles about them talking about that lived experience. And it is actually quite a common cognitive disorder. So I do wonder if, some people may not feel comfortable to talk about that because of the stigma that still exists. And I even thought, if I talk about things like that, or even having anxiety, which is what I thought it was at the time, I could be labeled as incompetent, to even be a Miss Universe title holder or Miss Universe contestant, which is such a shame that a lot of people still think that way. And in fact, I remember the time I was creating posts centered around mental health, and I had someone close to pageant community actually reach out to me and tell me not to post that stuff, because the Miss Universe organization might deem me as unfit to even compete, which is crazy. And to my understanding, the current Miss Universe, Shanice, Miss Nicaragua, she talks very openly about mental health, and she goes quite deep into those topics, which I think is amazing. So we are coming a long way, and it is changing. We're slowly getting rid of that stigma, which I think is amazing.
Absolutely. And year after year, women like you chip away at those injustices and chip away at the stigmas. So by you owning your truth and taking your mental health advocacy to the Miss Universe stage, you were blazing a trail, essentially. And I want to commend you for that, because it is so difficult to be vulnerable, especially when you're in the spotlight. because then you get in your head, quite literally. You get in your head and you think, oh no, now everyone knows what's going on between my ears. What inspired you to be so open and to be so vocal about your lived experiences?
Yeah, I think definitely one of the triggers was, you know, the Google search rabbit hole I went down, and just realizing how underrepresented it was in these communities, or, you know, online. I could see people talking about anxiety and things like that, and the ADHD thing started to come into conversation. And I do a lot of work with people with intellectual disabilities and severe mental health issues, and also neurodiversity, like autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. And yeah, I didn't really know of a lot of people in my position who were very open about talking about that. And as you were saying, it's scary to almost come out about it, because it's the digital blueprint, and once you say it, you can't really take it back. So I thought, I remember when I first did that post talking about it, it seemed so dramatic at the time, but my heart was just really beating out of my chest, because I thought, what have I done? It felt so incredibly vulnerable. But I'm so glad I did it. And to answer your question, it's kind of like I owe it to the little girl who I once was, who didn't see that represented in media, and who thought maybe, you know, people like me don't deserve a spot in those kind of fields, you know. So yeah, I working with a lot of young people as well with neurodiversity, I thought, like, if they could at least relate to me in one small way, you know, that would put a smile on my face and make it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. And isn't that the reason we do what we do?
Yeah.
I struggle with OCD and anxiety myself, and sometimes I think, what is the point even of posting this, or what is the point even of opening up or being vulnerable? Am I just screaming into a void? But then I read that one message that says, hey, I struggle with OCD, and I haven't seen many public figures talk about it so openly.
You're right.
And it takes that one person, and it feels reaffirming.
Yeah, I like that word. It is reaffirming.
Because we're at least we're changing our corner of the world. Yeah. You know?
Exactly. And I mean, you know, I also thought, I've got this platform, so what do I want to use it for, right? Like, I don't, of course, there are some aspects of our work which are a little bit self-indulgent, or, you know, it's us building a personal brand.
Sure.
Or whatever it is, you know, making an income. But, you know, I feel like it's also us doing our due diligence and doing our part, and having that responsibility of not just creating noise, but actually adding some substance to the world.
Hopefully. And also we're showing people that it is possible. It is possible to be out there and to follow your dreams and to live out your purpose, not in spite of, but because of
I love
anxiety.
That.
You know, our sensitivity is what makes us so powerful, what makes us able to connect with people, empathize with people. What's even more impressive about you is you are also a therapist. So you're not only speaking from lived experience, you're also speaking from your professional expertise. And you mentioned neurodiversity, which is something I really want to learn more about. I don't know much about it, and I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I've worked in the NDIS sector for a while. So in Australia, the NDIS, you know, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, nation building scheme that we've had so far. And it's provided a lot of support for people living with disabilities. And I've worked in that space for quite some time. I most recently worked actually at a NDIS provider that does gaming and coaching for people on the autism spectrum and who have ADHD as well. So I got a really good insight into neurodiverse populations through that work, but also my own lived experience. And I think the biggest, I suppose, misconception that people have is that there is something maybe inherently wrong with your brain if you do have you know, if you do live with a condition like that. But the thing is, it's just a difference in the way your brain functions. And there are a lot of people with autism or ADHD will actually tell you, despite the struggles, we actually wouldn't want to be any other way, because there are so many amazing qualities and benefits to living with a brain like that. And it's just a different brain type, that's all. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. But I'm also an ambassador for Special Olympics Australia. A lot of people think I'm talking about Paralympics. They're two different organisations. And Special Olympics Australia is very special. They help people with intellectual disabilities and autism through grassroots sports. So it's just insane to
That's
see.
incredible.
Yeah, a lot of these people, you know, they go through life facing so many challenges, and then they get to be Olympic gold medalists and, you know, travel the world and speak on stage. And it's just really wonderful to see that everyone's finally getting these opportunities. And I feel like in Australia, you know, we talk about diversity, we talk about cultural diversity, ethnic diversity. In the modelling field, you know, you see people of all different dress sizes, but yet neurodiversity and diversity in terms of disability, there's still such a long way to go. So if I play even a small part in advocating for that and putting it on the map, then I'm happy.
That's incredible. You're doing such amazing work. How can we be involved? How can we raise awareness? Is there phrasing that we're using incorrectly, or just a way to be more sensitive and more mindful around the topic?
Yeah. Well, I suppose one thing is, you know, I just wanted to highlight that it's not a mental illness. You know, it's just a diversity. You know, it's neurodiversity, and it's just you know, cognitive disorder could be a good way of framing it. Like for ADHD, I say I have a cognitive disorder, and I suppose, you know, just trying your best to understand and sit there with a person and ask questions. It's not about perfection, or if you misspeak sometimes or say the wrong things, you know, it's about just, you know, wanting to understand and asking questions and educating yourself. And
Absolutely.
TikTok and social media is so good for that, because there's so much content around ADHD and ASD, and a lot of people getting diagnosed because they actually can relate to a lot of the content. And it's become a bit of a joke, like everyone has it these days, but you know, it is quite common. Neurodiversity is very common, and that's why we're seeing so many diagnoses, and people who are previously misdiagnosed, like women are notoriously misdiagnosed, because with ADHD, for instance, you've got this image of a young boy bouncing off the walls, but there's different presentations, and some people are more inattentive and less hyperactive. So yeah, I think social media is really great for building that awareness.
So Daria, you come from a multicultural background. What is your take on mental health in Australia, and how does it differ from other parts of the world, like say the motherland of Russia?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's no secret that the state of affairs in terms of mental health in Australia could be in better shape. You know, in any given year, 1 in 5 Australians will experience a mental illness, so that's quite significant. And I feel like there are a few different factors. I've been thinking about it, just anecdotal evidence from my lived experience and my own observations and my client work. I feel like in Australia, we are quite an individualistic culture. And what I've noticed, I've had conversations with immigrants, say from Eastern Europe, and a lot of them would say, you know, we didn't have much in terms of resources back home, but we had each other, and we were so happy, and here we feel so isolated. And I feel like particularly after COVID and the lockdowns, there's been a change, and I think a lot of people do feel it. So I don't know if we picked up some habits of, you know, being self-sufficient and not relying on others that have carried on after that time period. But yeah, there's definitely been a bit of a change. And even say when I first immigrated to Australia, everyone would know their neighbour, and we'd have, you know, communal Christmas parties and barbecues. And here it's like, how many people actually know their neighbours? And I know a lot of us aren't currently living in our childhood home, and it's easier when you grow up in a certain place to know everyone on your street. But yeah, just little changes like that I'm noticing that are kind of adding to that isolation. The other factor that, and this is my opinion, and it may not be a popular one, but I know a lot of people will find it difficult to argue that there's truth to it. You know, we've got quite a big drinking culture here, and I'm all about brain health as well. You know, mental health, but also brain health, you know, eating the right foods and nutrition and everything in moderation, of course. I'm not saying don't drink if that's what you're inclined to do, but I feel like, yeah, that when you look at the consumption of alcohol and things like that, and actually like diets and things like that, it really, really impacts on your mental health. I think a lot more than people actually realize. And I feel like also Australia, being a relatively new country as well, you know, we've got a lot of amazing initiatives and campaigns, and the campaigns bring a lot of awareness and incite discussions around mental health. But I feel like, you know, we need to start thinking more creatively about mental health, therapeutic solutions and things like that. Yeah, I'm all about creativity and mental health, and even things like, for instance, we're told to meditate, but I actually tell some of my clients, you know, like if meditation is something you really struggle with and it's causing more stress, don't do it. Or do a walking meditation, or listen to music.
A hot girl walk.
Yeah, go on a hot girl walk, whatever makes you feel more relaxed and gets those endorphins flowing. I just feel like, yeah, a lot of these rules, they just very kind of one size fits all approach. And, you know, my approach to mental health is all about the individual. And every brain is different, everyone's story is different. No one therapeutic technique or no one methodology is going to fit everyone, right? To summarize, you know, getting a sense of community, really important. Also being mindful of what you're consuming, your diet, alcohol consumption, but also your diet in terms of, you know, scrolling on social media and who are the pages that you follow, you know, how do they make you feel? If you're following a bunch of pages and you notice, just take note of how you're actually feeling when you're doing your daily scroll.
Absolutely.
If you're feeling like trash, you know, that's going to that's going to be terrible for your mental health. So do a little audit, you know, and make sure that the pages you're engaging with and the content you're consuming, and the same goes for news, you know, make sure the content that you're consuming as much as possible is actually not contributing to the deterioration of your emotional well-being. Creative solutions to mental health, that's third. And I also think that it's very important to be in the pursuit of your purpose as much as possible, because when you're living in your life purpose, I feel like, yeah, you would know, it just adds this
alignment.
Yeah, I think so. Alignment is probably more of the word that I'm looking for, and I can attest to this. When I was living out of alignment, doing things that I was told that I should do as being a part of this industry, you know, being told to make certain moves in order to elevate my career, that just did not feel aligned with me whatsoever. And I had people telling me, oh, you must be the happiest girl in the world. And I thought, no, like I'm actually quite miserable. So it was only when I kind of took a good hard look at myself and, you know, what really authentically aligned with me, what did I want to do in this world, who did I want to be, you know, my mental health drastically improved. But also being mindful of the people that you're surrounded with, right? I see so many people that, you know, consider people to be friends, but from the outside looking in, I could see that they're not quite authentic, or they don't necessarily wish the best for them. So I think just really developing that power of discernment wherever possible, and to not, it sounds cliche, but not allowing toxic people and energy vampires to be in your space. And you know, sometimes it's inevitable, right? When we are faced with situations where we can't escape that, and perhaps, you know, like with family or a living arrangement, and you know, you really can't escape that situation, just wherever possible, putting up an emotional wall, you know, around you, and having a support network in place in case of, you know, something going wrong, or you needing to draw on that support of the people that actually care about you. It's really important.
There's so much gold dust in what you just said. I don't even know where to begin. I particularly love what you said about a life audit, just checking in with yourself from time to time. Oftentimes we can get stuck on the hamster wheel.
Yes.
And so it's nice to just check in, you know, what are the things that are no longer serving me?
Yeah.
Whether it be the food that I am feeding my body or the content that I'm feeding my mind. So that's really powerful, actionable advice.
Yeah.
Just cutting out one thing a day.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to go
right.
cold turkey. You can just take one incremental step towards subtle self-development, because no improvement, no change is ever too small.
Yeah.
Because ultimately they will have an immeasurable impact on your well-being. What are the other self-care rituals that you rely on to help you reset?
Yeah, and it's funny what you said about, you know, no change is too small. Like, I've been feeling recently like just this feeling of being stuck, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. In reality, I just really want to go overseas. I want to go on a holiday, but at the moment I can't because of work. And so I thought, okay, what can I do right now that is within my control that will improve my mental health and my situation? It's that sense of novelty that I'm craving. So I just, you know what? I'm going to move my bed. I'm really into feng shui. I'm so sensitive to feng shui and the way the room is laid out. I'm like, this bed is not right. I'm going to move it to the opposite corner, facing a different way. I did it. I just had the best sleep that night, and I just opened my door now, and I'm just loving it.
There's like a spring in your step.
Yeah, just a tiny change, but you know, my brain was looking for novelty in that moment.
Craving it. Exactly.
It wasn't necessarily like going on a holiday. It was just something to jazz up my life and change it up a little bit, and it worked. And in terms of doom scrolling, even, you know, sometimes I even say to my clients, like, if you know, you feel dysregulated and you want to distract yourself, do it. You know, if you think it's going to help, go on TikTok, have a little scroll, as long as it's, you know, not making you feel terrible afterwards, that's totally fine. But for me, I have this really, really big obsession with listening to music. It's actually quite maladaptive. At the best of times, I always am listening to music. I always have a song playing. So in the morning I wake up, I put on my flamenco music or my jazzy crooners or whatever it is to start the day in a positive note.
You're going to have to link those playlists to me.
I will do that actually.
Okay,
I'll link you guys with my Spotify playlist. So that's for the morning. When I'm working, I like my jazzy house. You know, I like to gamify the experience, and this is a really good tip if you have ADHD, gamifying the experience and making the more monotonous everyday tasks like admin and emails a little bit more fun and palatable. So yeah, I'll listen to that while I'm working, and in the evenings to wind down, my lo-fi hip hop or binaural beats are really good. So when I'm meditating at nighttime, I listen to binaural beats, and then I probably doze off with music playing as well. So for me, as I said, it's like probably a little bit maladaptive. It's probably a bit too much, but for me, it's something that makes me happy. And my stepdad always told me since I was a little kid, he said music is like the best natural high that you could get, and I've never forgotten that. So, and it's great because you could actually, it's like a brain hack for your mood essentially. Whatever mood you want to get in, you just put on a playlist for that. There's always a playlist for everything. Yeah. So that's my favorite.
I love that. Do you do a dancey dance too sometimes to get the sillies out? Okay.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that. Yeah, sometimes. You know, I grew up dancing and performing, and that's another thing. I'm a huge believer in movement. You know, going to a gym, dancing. A lot of stress is stored in the hips, and I just for me, there's something cathartic about, you know, just moving your body, and it's quite essential. So.
That is such a powerful tool. Metabolizing your emotions through movement. It is so underrated.
Yeah, we should do an interpretive dance later.
We truly should. Maybe you'll even film it.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Now I want to pivot from self-care rituals to your beauty tips, because they are, I'm sure, highly coveted, being that you are a model, you've been in the industry for years, you are such a pro and incredible at what you do. I want to know, what is the most bizarre beauty tip you've received over the years?
Okay, oh my gosh, I feel like there's been quite a few. I'm always learning things from makeup artists. I feel like I'm gonna take it back to my childhood and my grandma, because
Aww.
Russian people, they're very holistic in their approach to beauty. And I would say this isn't so much of a beauty tip, but for when you're sick, she always used to say to cut up an onion and to just put it on a pillow next to you, and the fumes would unblock your nose. I suppose it is like a beauty tip, because it's, you know, when you're feeling healthy and you don't have a cold, you do feel more beautiful.
More beautiful, exactly.
But yeah, so I refused to do that because gross. And she would she would cut it up. She would cut it up, and I would wake up and I would have an onion next to me, and I'm like, oh, Grandma, not again, you know. But then my sinuses would be unblocked and I would look more beautiful. So I suppose
Grandma knows
she
best.
was right. Grandma always knows best. So thank you, Babushka, for that one. Another weird one that I remember I read once in a book. I don't know if it's a Russian thing, but I think I read it. I had a phase when I was a kid and I was really into holistic beauty. And I read that putting egg yolks in your hair was really good for it. So I don't know if you've heard that one. Egg yolks and mayo.
Yeah.
So I used to make like a little concoction of egg yolks and mayo, and I used to put in my hair. I used to put in my dad's hair, and just everyone got involved. I used to have like a little spa going, and we're a shiny haired family. Let's just
You
say.
have gorgeous, luscious hair. I have to say, I read that in a magazine too.
Yeah.
I remember I may have been 7 or 8, and I read that Julia Roberts did it for her hair.
That must be why.
So exactly. So I said, of course.
And she has beautiful hair.
She
so it
is Pretty
works.
Woman. Exactly. I love that. I love that. Do you still do that today?
No, but maybe my hair will be more beautiful if I did. So
Yeah.
I need to get back into it. Let's both try it and see how we go. We'll report back.
We'll circle back.
Yeah.
We'll circle back. Now, if you could tell that little Daria who had congested sinuses, whose grandma was cutting up an onion and putting it next to her pillow, if you could tell her one piece of mental health advice, what would it be?
I would say just stay in your lane. You know, you're perfect the way you are, and your current challenges are going to become your biggest strengths, and just follow that calling. You know, you may get lost along the way, but ultimately in your heart you know who you want to be and where you want to be. So just follow that and don't listen to anyone who's trying to tell you otherwise, because you can do it and it's possible, and you did it.
You did it. You did it. And you're here, and you are thriving, and you are an inspiration, and I'm so grateful to have you on. Daria, before I let you go, you have proven that you are a well of secrets. So I have to ask, in the spirit of burning questions, tell me a juicy secret you've never told anybody else before.
Well, I'm not wearing any hairspray right now, thank God. But one time I had a shoot for Miss Universe Australia, and I forgot to tan one of my legs. I have one tan leg and one pale leg. So I rock up, and then they put me in a dress, which is a one-legged dress. And
the pale leg was out.
the pale leg was out, and then, you know, my arms were darker than my leg, and actually it was a blessing that it was one leg showing. But yeah, so that was interesting. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but yeah, I haven't told anyone that before.
Thank you so much for sharing. Don't worry, this is just between you and me.
My secret
no
is
one's
safe with
watching.
you.
Yeah. This is a safe space.
Okay. I'm glad.
Please never do that again.
I try not to. Lesson learned.
Okay. Daria, thank you so much. You have been a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for being on Burning Questions. You are an incredible resource too. I learned so much just watching your stories. So thank you so much for educating us all with love. Please tell the people where they can find you online.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this chat. You can find me on pretty much every platform. At Daria Varlamova is my handle, and we'll put it up on a screen for you.
Thank you so much, Daria.
Thank you.